Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today I thought I'd do something a lot different than usual. Although I do frequently give demonstration readings, it's always with a pretend question. Now when I work it into the cards, it's always, when I meditate, it's always with the intention that it's for a demonstration and to bring as much meaning, with those particular cards for demonstration as I can. I don't ever do real readings for anyone, publicly. You know what I mean? I do videos for clients. I don't mean that, but I just, would never put a real person's story or question as as a video demonstration that I would use. With the only exception might be is if I do one for myself, and I've done a few for myself. And today, this falls under that category. Now, the reason I think it's helpful to have a real question with a real story and a real person behind it is because when I do these fictitious demonstrations, there's only the only information, or thing that you can experience is a fictitious question. So you don't necessarily know the in and outs of a circumstance. Now, most of the time when I do readings for clients, I don't know hardly any of the in and outs, but sometimes they give me, something, even if I only get a feeling of who they are by the way they ask the question and just by, concentrating on their name. That's something. And so when I do some of these, readings that have no real question, it's like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And a real thoughtful interpretation for a real client or a real person or a real situation can go on longer. Now, I'm sure I will try to keep this 30 minutes or under because, I tend to be brief. I don't tend to be very long-winded by nature, especially with my readings, because you cut to the chase, But it might be a little longer, or there might be more insights that I will see because it's a situation that I'm aware of. Now, this brings me to the other thing that I want to mention, is a lot of people have asked me privately, why don't you go online and do something for like Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie and do those kinds of things? And, if you've seen my videos or you know me personally, you know that, I'm not about doing, I don't like to like glom onto the sensational and become part of that train, And it's not because I don't think about those stories, and think, oh my gosh, that would be really interesting to know. But because, I have this philosophy that unless it's, a client who's directly asking me to help with a situation like that, that's not my story. Their thing isn't my story unless someone in their life, solicits help from me. Then it becomes, part of something that I can legitimately do. That's why I won't spy for people. I don't prefer to do third-party readings. And when I say I don't prefer, it means I don't just do them, because I'm not going to spy or, I'm not even connected to that person because you're the one who's coming, a third person is coming to me, right? So if a third person's coming to me about another person, the only person I'm connecting to is the person who's come to me and their perspective and not the other person's reality, right? Necessarily. So with, those kinds of readings, it's what that client needs to know. And sometimes they don't need to know anything. And if it's too much that it's like that they don't really have a pony in the race or something, I just won't do the readings. Okay, I hope all that made sense. That brings me to this question, because this question has to do with a young lady that I knew in high school who disappeared in 1975. And nobody's ever, to my knowledge, and I check almost, several times a year, and I most recently checked the past few weeks because this time of year, I guess I think about her. one of the points during the year that I think about her. And there has been a flurry of recent activity, and I'll say recent being like 6 months, where somebody got a lead finally after 47 years. A lead, brought them to try to look in a particular area. But as far as I know, after that, nothing came of it. They never did find her. If they did, they didn't make it public, and I'm not aware that they've found this young lady. Now, why does this have anything to do with me? It doesn't directly. I think she has siblings who are still alive. Sadly, her parents passed away. Not, if any of them had come to me, and they wouldn't have even known me or anything either, but if they had come to me and said, "How can you help us? We're at our wits' end. We're even considering a tarot reading." I would do it for them. But that hasn't happened. So I'm definitely a third party. However, I've invested years of my life caring for this individual, and I've had experiences with her. She and I were in the same math class at the last class of the day. And I got to know her a little bit. We didn't hang out. She was a very religious girl, a very, very, nice young girl. Now, not to say that I wasn't nice, but I would have been the one, smoking pot somewhere, So we were different, and we ran in different circles, but I liked her. I did not dislike her. Now, on a particular Friday afternoon in May, it was, as I said, the last period of the day, and it was hot, it was hot. And our math teacher said, "You know what, let's go to the cafeteria and get some drinks or something, So we all love that idea, just because in those days, we're talking 47 years ago, 46 years ago, teachers just didn't take you to the cafeteria to do something spontaneous like that, And we thought that, Mr. Lee was just the coolest guy. Now, Wendy and I sat next to one another in math class. And as it turned out, everybody in the class had enough money to buy a soda for themselves, or whatever it was they bought. In those days, they just had soda. But Wendy and I were the only two who didn't have enough money. But between us, we had enough money to buy a can of soda. So we pooled our resources, and, we already sat next to each other. So we just made the most of, sitting next to each other, and we shared the soda. And, not that we had any real conversation. We were both actually pretty reticent people, but we were just pleasant with one another, and we were happy to share the soda. And we were like the odd couple who probably never would have been brought together to share a soda under, typical circumstances. But on that particular day, we were. Anyway, the next day, she disappeared. And when I say she disappeared, I mean she fell off the face of the earth, And we lived in a suburban town in Pennsylvania, a suburb of Philadelphia. And, my mother was friends with a woman who was good friends with Wendy's mother. The girl's name was Wendy. And so, indirectly, I would hear news and keep abreast of whatever discoveries or efforts were being made to find Wendy. Her parents sadly both passed away, before ever figuring out or finding out whatever happened to Wendy. But I have to say that through the years, I was made aware of the fact that they never stopped looking for her. Any possible location where she could have possibly gone, in all the years they remained alive, they turned over that rock and they looked, They couldn't even get the FBI involved because the FBI saw it more as a runaway thing, although this young lady, I think anybody who knew her probably would have felt that she would be the last person who would put their parents through something like this and wouldn't run away, because she was just a good kid, good kid vibes. So why is it any of my business? I think, as I mentioned, because I've invested so many of my years caring, And now, like, her parents have passed. I don't know if both of her siblings are still alive. But now it's really coming down to classmates who knew her, or knew of her, who are keeping, word of her alive, And at any rate, I decided that I think, that I, if the willing, and I've asked for permission from, Wendy, if she happens to be deceased and over the other side, and the universe to help me, to receive her story. And if they allow for me to receive her story, then be able to present it in a meaningful way and to make sense of it. I've asked in advance, because I did my meditative process off camera, that if it's not for me to know, then to present me with a great number, present me with a number of swords or batons, anything to make it look like a fence or you're blocked out, because then I would take it to know that it's not for me to say and it's not for me to present on. Or if there's a pattern of X's or blockages, that is created, even if it's not by a lot of cards, but just by virtue of its location, or, just to let me know that it's not for me to talk about or to know about. So I asked that. I also, in my concentration, indicated that I would be using my signature 9 cards, plus the additional 4 that I do, which I've described as the quintessential messages. And I'm not like delegating row 1, 2, 3, 4, or, any kind of row any kind of row meaning. Like, so row 1 isn't going to mean this part of the question or anything. I'm just going to read it as a fluid block of cards. Anything and any insights and information that could be given to me. Now, I do know a few things about this that maybe I should mention before laying the cards, or maybe some of it will come out as I read and interpret the cards. But we do know that on Friday afternoon, Wendy's parents decided to go golfing, and they asked Wendy if she wanted to go. And Wendy said no. She was sunbathing on the roof of their house, and that she really wanted to get a birthday present for her brother. So she was walking to the mall, which was like, the local, shopping area, which is like a mile from her house, or a mile and a half. And it was a walk that all of us girls pretty much did. We in that neighborhood. Well, I didn't live in her neighborhood, but I lived in her general community, and that community is like the kind of idyllic location, that nobody would have ever felt afraid to be, or to even let your daughter walk. It wasn't like that, but it became that. At any rate, so the parents left. Wendy went for her walk. A number of neighbors passed her in cars on that particular road, and one neighbor passed her, came home and had to go back out again within a 5-minute period or something. And it could be established that she was last seen, within a certain few minutes of time in a particular spot. And that's where her scent died. Her parents could never get the FBI involved, because the FBI just said it was probably a runaway scenario, which I don't think anybody bought. And so it was up to the parents all those years to try to assume she was a runaway and try to find her wherever they could find her. Now, like I said, several times a year, I'll do Google on her and, see what pops up. And just now, when I did a Google on her, it turns out that about 5 or 6 months ago, I think the FBI finally got involved 6 or 7 years later, and determined that it was probably a homicide. And so they went to the property of, I guess, the property directly in front of the spot on the road where she disappeared. And that's where they started digging up 46 years later. So I don't know what they found, because nothing came up after that. And, it was a lead they thought they had, but, as far as I know, I don't know what came of that. And I don't think anything did. I don't think they found anything. So I just kind of want to remember Wendy, honor Wendy, and bring some kind of peace, for those who are still alive, who knew her, just to try to have an understanding of what became of her. And in a way, all the people who disappear that nobody pays attention to, or, don't become national headline news, there needs to be people who still care and who are still willing to make an effort to try to find her, or them. Okay, so having said that, I did handle and mix the cards already. I'll do a couple more so it's a live thing and not something I staged or anything. Wow, so it opens up with a barrier of 5. 8 of coin. 2. Okay, so we do have that initial barrier, but we'll see. We have 3 of cups. Now, why am I using this particular deck? I'm using the first deck I ever owned, the World card. And for those of you who know me or know of me, that would be the 1JJ Swiss Tarot, which I got. I think this particular one is like from 1970, but I didn't buy it until probably 75 or 76. See, $2. Yeah, so that's the copy I got. And why am I using it? Well, although I bought it after Wendy disappeared, she disappeared in in May of 75, and the earliest I would have bought this would have been in like July or August of 75. I might not have bought it until 76 because I can't remember. But this would have been the deck closest to my, what I would have had at that young age. I was 15 going on 16. She had already turned 15 too, I think, or she might have been going, I don't know. I was a year ahead of her in school, but we were in the same math class because I postponed taking that particular subject for a year. But I was also young. I graduated at 17. So in May, I would have been either 15 going on, in that year, I would have been 15 going on 16. Okay, so we don't have, an overwhelming pattern of this is not for you to just, to know. I have the one barricade, because maybe there is some stuff that's unknowable, but I don't get the sense of there being a barricade. In fact, in the front and center, we have the World card, which kind of like sucks you in. So I'm not getting the sense that this is not for me to know. So let me pull the quintessential cards. I'll do that off camera so I'm not wasting film. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. With the addition of the quint cards, we have the Devil, the Justice card, and then Le Batelier, some people call the Magician, and a triangle being formed here with Juno, who may have been a substitute for Pope Joan. But in any case, if we identify strictly as Juno, certainly having to do with female mystery would certainly apply. And, not even looking at some of these other cards, I'm like struck by this, So there's a sense that there may have been some deception or trickery, certainly a sense of foul play, maybe by an individual that Wendy trusted. Now, you see, when I do, this kind of read, sometimes the quintessential cards, because they will always end up being trump cards, right? Cut to the chase, and give us the story. It gives me the story, And then these other cards help me get there, right? Gives me the gist of the story, and then these maybe will help me get there. So maybe it's possible from what I'm seeing, is that there was maybe some kind of deception, maybe by someone she trusts, and obviously foul play occurred. it's possible somebody offered her a ride or a lift or something like that, and she knew of them, even if she didn't know them well, or maybe she did know them well, I don't know. Maybe she trusted them enough to get in the car and go, because her scent ended abruptly in the middle of the road. So the logical thing that most of the authorities and her parents thought was that she was picked up, at that road or at that spot. They lost her scent. Now, the overall card for the entire spread is like a love card. Now, excuse me, it should have been love. I pulled the wrong card. I have to go get the right card. It added up to 24, which would reduce to 26. And when I was just going through the cards real quick, I just grabbed this, thinking it was the lover card. But let me get it. Okay, so my apologies for that. It was my intent to pull the lover card. It's not like I added it wrong and thought it was, judgment all along. And then what I mean? It wasn't like that. It was like I knew that I should have been pulling the lover card. So the lover card, in addition to this information, almost makes you think, well, maybe it was someone she might have had an attachment to, She didn't seem the sort or the kind of girl that was like boy crazy or anything like that. It didn't seem like she was at that point in her life where she was interested in pursuing love interests, So, but who knows? I mean, maybe there was just somebody she secretly had a crush on or something, or I don't know. Or certainly it was someone that she thought she might have had a bond with. Maybe there was somebody that she had clicked with or had a bond with. It had nothing to do with romance. It could have been something like that. And also, if that's not the case, it could just be overall sense of love, for the people in her life, who never gave up, and that could be a feature of it. Let's take a look at some of these other cards and see what information we can get. I notice, well, the only, let me go this way instead of where I was going to go. The only suit that's missing is a suit of swords, which is interesting because one of the things that I would think right away is if I were to see swords, I would associate it with some type of violence, right? And I'm not seeing the violence, which kind of is, very surprising and contraindicated in my mind that if someone goes missing, especially, a thoughtful, harmless young woman goes missing, and that we do see that there's some type of foul play perpetrated by someone who she probably felt possibly a bond with or thought she knew or thought she could trust, because there seems to be some kind of deception, And the trust card, which I think in this case, justice could be read as trust. Why don't we see cards of violence, Now, it could be said that this is, this could be seen as a weapon, and it is a weapon, of course. The batons, in this way of clubbing somebody over a head could be, a weapon. But I'm not getting that kind of vibe, So perhaps it was something that was like spontaneous, not premeditated, not intentional. But I'm not getting a sense that there was like weapons of like knives or maybe even guns involved. Now, interestingly, the thought was that she got into a car and drove away, but I don't see the chariot here, which would be another card that I would assume I would see for the idea that she was captured in a van or an automobile. So I'm not picking vehicle vibe up either. But what I'm seeing is, an opportunity being presented, maybe making an unwise choice, maybe going against, her instincts a little bit. The Five of Batons is uneasy. It could, suit of batons could be social, right? Your social aspects of your life. So it might have been an uneasy social thing, that she might not have felt like it was a great idea, but overall she might have thought she could have trusted this person if that's the scenario and she got into someone's car. But again, I'm not seeing a vehicle, and none of the quintessential cards have, or the chariot with a vehicle. Now, the world card being front and center, the world card is kind of like the best card in the spread, right? If you want something to be true, it's one of the cards you would hope would pop up for you, right? So we have, the world card front and center. I mean, it is front and center of the original 9 cards. And it's the card that kind of sucked me in to make me realize that I was allowed to enter this world. I was allowed to get this kind of information, right? But then what is the information? What is the information? Well, we have, besides the suit of swords, which we don't have, and we just see in the justice card a sword, but she's, the suit of swords is not represented here. We have 2 coins. We have 3 batons. 1, 2, 3. We have 1 cup. And then we have 3 trump cards that form this shape. So we see in the top row, the 5 of batons, which might indicate as kind of a social awkward, or, maybe maybe her instincts said, maybe, I'm a little bit have a little bit of unease about this opportunity. Because, okay, down here I'm seeing opportunity, making a decision, making a choice, taking a chance, right? And then this would represent her, Then right over here, as I described, this network of cards, being deceived, being tricked, having some foul play, somebody that she trusted, or maybe there was some type of bond with or familiarity with. And then this card opening the spread, helping me put it together as a sense of unease. We go from 8 coins, which for me can represent, physical well-being, the things that money can buy, the things that can bring well-being, right? So, material well-being or comfort of who you are or whatever. I just generally interpret, especially in the context of a question like this, the coins to represent well-being. So we have a sense of unease. We have relatively high level of comfort, which goes down dramatically, right? It's like exponentially by a few times less. So the sense of well-being diminishes. And then we have, I think, pretty readily, maybe she was able to identify and figure out that there was some type of foul thing about to happen, or, before it happened. I think her instincts, I think she recognized rather quickly that something was going to go amiss. And I think I described this with this, but then we have this row. This row is really great, We have front and center the world card being a card of fulfillment, a card of satisfaction, a card of maybe manifestation of something to happen, right? We have 3 coins, which means growth. It's 3, 6, 9. They're your perfect numbers, right? 3 is a perfect number. And so if it's growth, or if it's change, or even if it's instability going toward the right direction. And then we have Juno, who is, the master of what she does, female power of intuition. So this row, then let's make sense of this. It's such a positive row. So we have a sense of what happened, but, or the circumstances, or how she might have felt, or what ultimately, happened. But, can this row at all, show us, where we might find her? I didn't ask that as a specific question. I just wanted insights to help with the mystery of what became of her, or whatever message they will allow, me to communicate about her life, So let's take a look at what mystery, or what light to the story this row can offer. And one of the things, that occurs to me is that she's been reborn, or that she's, gone beyond. But not only has she gone beyond, but that she's also come back, or she exists elsewhere, if not, here, then, somewhere else in the universe. And I get, like if I had seen the world card and Juno together, in any other spread, I would say in my back of my mind, oh, maybe there's a pregnancy or something like that. So like this could, suggest rebirth of not only having moved on, but moved on, which is a comfort, because, maybe she's come back, somewhere in the world. I don't know, like where, but, somewhere else in the world. And maybe it's not for us to know, where her body is buried. It could be that she is buried. I mean, we could see this as a shape in the earth and someone being laid in there. I mean, we don't necessarily have to read this as the world card as being the best card in the spread and you're going to get your wish, I mean, we could take a look at it as, for its visual imagery as well, and maybe it's possible, that she's buried, above her is, the suit of earth, right? So, it could suggest that she's been buried, she's underground, she's been covered up. I mean, we do have earth above her, we have growth around her. Like I think the first thing I said is like growth, right? So like she could be buried where there is growth and, earth. So it's possible they were on the right track when they were trying to dig up the area. I don't know if that they found her, but maybe they were on the right track because these cards could suggest that. But I think they also suggest, if you're a spiritual person and you believe in this sort of thing, that she's already like gone on to a better place. Like she's not spending time with it, here. When I think what I've described is probably, is what I'm seeing happened, and it kind of all makes sense based on the facts that we know, or that we think we know. So I guess no real new information except that, yeah, I think they're on the right track when they're digging, because the more I think of it, this really does kind of say that, there's vegetation, there's earth, there's a body in the center of a shape, which could mean, could be a hole, right? It could be rebirth, but it could be a hole. And we have some, even though this, I think, was being offered as an opportunity, it's still, a tree, right? It's still from a tree. It still has growth on it. So making, the decision to take a chance, get going with someone. I think someone else was definitely involved. But feeling, immediately ill at ease, like understanding rather quickly that something foul was happening. And this is what I've made of these cards. So I hope this has been insightful to you. I mean, this is a reading basically that I've done for myself. And so I've gone into as much detail with it as I would if it was a client. So I hope it's been interesting for you. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.